We talked about how Orange County Choppers was a major client of yours. In fact, you produced more than 200 chassis for the unbelievable choppers that we saw out of there. And you told us about some of the crazy deadlines about how a chassis would have to be from Oklahoma to New York in just days. Well, what we wanted to tell are some of the stories where you conquered the impossible and maybe were asked to do some things that were a little unrealistic. Tell me about the craziest thing that Teutul's asked you to do.
Probably the hardest bike that we ever built for them was a snap-on bike, because Paul wanted the chassis made out of hex, and they don't make hex tubing. So I ordered 1.25" 1018 solid in hex, and we found a company in Oklahoma that built hydraulic cylinders and had it gun drilled to make tubing out of it. And then in bending it, it killed 3 sets of dies because of the sharp edges, and then we had to heat it and twist it with a wrench to line all the lines up, because as you bent it, it would roll. So the lines weren't in line with each other. And we ended up building 2 of those chassis because they wanted one for the East Coast and one for the West Coast. And that was the most expensive chassis I ever built. That was about $10,000 for the chassis.
Oh, gosh. When you first heard about the project and what they wanted to do, what was your initial reaction?
It didn't bother me until I realized that they didn't make hex tubing, and then I had to figure out a way to make hex tubing. And that was the hardest part.
And what was the end result? What was the impression that the Teutul's had after looking at your work?
They loved all that, but I don't even know if they realized how much work it was to do. They realized it was more expensive than most of the chassis, but I don't think they really realized what it took to do it.
What was the second hardest project they ever put you on?
We built an aluminum chassis for the Guggenheim Museum that after the World Trade Center that was going to be on permanent display. And aluminum is a lot fun to work with, but it's not the right thing to build a chopper chassis out of.
I can understand that. I bet you ran into a whole lot of problems and a whole lot of pitfalls.
Well, the thing is you got to understand, most of their bikes were not designed to be ridden, especially a bike like that. Intentionally, it's more art than it is a motorcycle. So it wouldn't have lived very long on the street. Aluminum chassis with no heat treating or anything is not a good chopper chassis, and especially for a Harley motor.
I love the bikes that they build, and I love the legacy that those gentlemen have, and I think it was a great, entertaining show. What I do want to say, and this is no disrespect to them, expanding on what you just mentioned, now we're seeing these bikes uncovered at auctions for 5, 6, 7, 8 grand.
They're only worth what somebody's willing to pay for them.
And you're talking about builds that were 6 figures.
Well, the whole scenario behind the deal is they charge, I think it was $150,000 for a bike, but that got you an hour advertisement on national TV in syndication. So that's the cheapest advertisement you could possibly do. So the bikes that were built for Caterpillar or Snap-on or anything else were advertisement. That's what you paid for, not the fact that it was a $150,000 motorcycle, but it was $150,000 worth of advertisement.
You've been in this business a long time. You've seen a lot of trends come and go. It seems like the chopper scene has really cooled off. You think it'll ever be back?
Probably. It's like a porpoise. It keeps surfacing. You know, everybody realizes choppers don't stop, they don't handle, they don't do anything other than look cool in front of the bar. You know, it's not a real motorcycle. It's a fantasy.
Well, if you go to Bike Week and you sit on Main Street, which we did this year on a Friday, which is some of the greatest entertainment and people watching and motorcycle watching ever, you realize that the big wheel bagger has really replaced the chopper. What are your thoughts on that? Is that trend here to stay, or is that just a come and go?
Because people will take say a 2010 bagger and spend $50,000, $60,000 on it, and when they go to sell it, it's worth $8,000. Because you can't get paid for customizing. The bank only recognizes the fact that it's a 2010 Harley, and it's 10 years old, 11 years old.
Why do you think we're not seeing some of the crazy stuff we saw in terms of ground up builds and custom bikes in the bagger world that we saw over in the chopper world? Now I know there's an awful lot of customization.
Oh, you do in the bagger world, Allie. But the thing is at some point it runs its course, because people are spending all this money on it and they can't get the money back out of it. You know, it's one thing to take a loss on driving a vehicle, but to take a 200% over cost loss is a little hard for some people.
One thing
and also the you know, I did the custom bike shows for years and years and years, and it's like anything else. You know, you have to want to do it because it's a pain in the butt.
So I think the moral of the story is, if you want to customize a motorcycle, you need to also realize you're probably burning a little bit of money. It's not quite
no, not probably. You are burning, you're burning money. It's just like having a nice boat at the lake. You burn $400 in gas every day.
That's right.
You're burning money.
And I think as a drag racer, you understand a thing or two about maybe destroying an engine in less than 5 seconds. That can happen, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So maybe it's just this curse, this lust we have for two wheels that we can't escape.
Well, you know, the choppers were cool, but then like everything else, it goes beyond. You know, it gets to where they're not motorcycles anymore because they don't stop, they don't turn, they don't do anything a real motorcycle does, but they look good. And the baggers took it to another notch, because then you can have a giant stereo and listen to the stereo outside the bar.
Well, all right, I got to get your take on this, because you correct me if I'm wrong, audio wasn't a big thing when Orange County choppers were around, because it would have happened with all the different builds and how they ran out of ideas. Yes. They would have made a speaker bike for an audio company. Now we know audio is all the rage. There's sound competitions. I like it. I'm okay with it. Anything that promotes motorcycling, I'm okay with. What I don't like is when I go to Bike Week and 40 bikes pass me and there's 40 different songs, and it's probably the worst sound you could ever hear in your life. So I don't know what we do to prevent that, but what do you think about this audio craze?
It's like anything else. That's what the people want. That's what you give. I've got a good friend of mine here in town that owns an audio shop, and he puts audio on everything from motorcycles to boats. And he loves it because it's great business. But, you know, I have stereo on. I have a big dog bagger because that's what I raced at Bonneville, and I bought one, and I had him put a stereo on it, and 90% of the time I don't even have it on.
It's good to hear your engine too. You know, you also want to be alert enough to hear the sounds of the road, and if there's any screeching tires behind you.
I've gone to many bike rallies to where you can hear somebody's stereo at highway speeds from 100 yards away. And that's just, you know, that's just crazy.
Well, this has been an awesome trip down memory lane. Appreciate it, man. Thanks so much again for having me. I think the next step is we got to have a reunion with the Teutels, yourself, Larry McBride. We almost made it happen a few years ago. We got him to the racetrack, but I think we got to bring him out to another race and give them a big whiff of nitro.
Absolutely.